Yo, 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 what's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Get It Bucket Podcast, Season 2, Episode 2. We are here. If you listen to the first show of season two, we broke down the Big East, one of the better conferences in the country. On today's show, we're gonna break down. I know my co-host his conference, and I know he's excited to get into it, not just with his conference, but his Spartans. And we know we got a lot to talk about them uh, out in Sparty Town. But Kev, as always, my co-host, my brother, what's going on, man?
Man, I can't complain. I'm always good, bro. Ready to talk about the Big Ten. Excited as always be back here, get a bucket, man. Y'all know how we rocking. College basketball is upon us. We only a few weeks out. I literally cannot wait, bro.
Wow,
I'm so excited. And yeah, we here, man. I'm good though. How you been?
I'm good, brother. Just getting to the new crib, getting everything acclimated. That basketball, we got the NBA starts next week, college basketball in a few weeks. A lot
Yep.
to go on. And let's dive right into it. We're going to talk about the Big Ten Conference. So just to go through, we're going to do it like we did last week on last week's show, kind of preview a little, go through, new coaches, new places and all, talk about recruits, transfers, and then get into you know, the nitty gritty with the Big Ten and all that. But not a lot of new coaches going on like we did with the Big East and all that. Just one in particular, Mike Rhodes, former VCU coach, takes over for Penn State for Michael Shrewsbury, who went on to go to Notre Dame. After they had their vacancy and all that. So we could kind of get into a little bit about this. How do we feel about Mike Rhodes taking over at Penn State? We know what Penn State did. They kind of shocked some people last year. They had a nice little run and all that. And Michael Struber, got paid and went to Notre Dame and all that. So how do we feel about Mike Rhodes taking over? Did a nice job at VCU. So how do we feel about him taking over at Penn State? Because listen, Penn State before the last few years, I mean, that's a tough job. That's a
Mm-hmm.
tough. It's a highly regarded academic school, and it's just never been known for hoop. It's never been known for hoop, and now we're starting to see the smart schools starting to get relevant and all that. So how do we feel about Mike Rose taking over, and give me the level of difficulty he'll have taking over at Penn State now.
Man, first of all, I want to shout out to Michael Shrewsbury for sure, just because I mean going to Notre Dame won, but like as you mentioned, the season he had last year, he really I feel like he gave a new energy to the Big Ten that the Big Ten has kind of been lacking in. And he really
Mm-hmm.
kind of made everybody get a little bit deeper in their bags and force their hand. And so salute to Shrews. I wish him nothing but the best at Notre Dame. But for Mike Rose, I love this hire, to be honest with you, just because as you mentioned at VCU, they had a lot of success. They made the tournament last year. They did a lot of great things. He brings Ace Baldwin with him last year, who was the A10 Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year, which is crazy in itself. But to me, he's kind of like Shrews in the sense that he's going to bring a new flavor to the Big Ten, right? He loves the full court press. They get up and down. They play 100 miles per hour constantly all the time. So I like it. I truly do. And he's from Pennsylvania too, so I think that helps him out a lot. And it's a tough job, but at the same time, because you're in the Big Ten is expanding. The Big Ten is one of the biggest conferences in the country. It's going to be like that for a while because ESPN and the bigger conferences are going to get the TV deals and all that things like that. And when you think about it, you're not really competing with any major schools recruiting wise because we know with Villanova, right? Villanova has a type. They identify their type and they recruit their type. They don't recruit outside of the type of guys that they have, drawn up in their system, right? You think about Pitt, Jeff Capel, he's done an okay job, but he's not even recruiting Pennsylvania kids like that. He goes outside the state all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
really like Pennsylvania has talent and it starts off in Philly, but you can go to Pittsburgh and find talent. There's a couple other cities out there too. So I know he'll get the PA kids, and you got to go snag some Midwest kids. Maybe not the top tier kids in the Midwest, but like this second, third tier kids in the Midwest that are just hungry to play D1 basketball and get opportunity. You probably got to hit the JUCO route a little bit too.
Yeah.
But knowing Mike Rhodes, he's been grinding for a long time. I'm a big fan of this hire. I don't know Penn State's athletic director, but these past few hires, they've hit it out the park with that. So I expect Mike Rhodes to be pretty solid. Year one might be a little bit rough, even though I do kind of like their roster, but for sure within year two, year three, year four, I expect Penn State to be like a consistent threat in the Big Ten year in and year out.
And you just mentioned like the JUCO route and like and the transfer portal. They
Mm-hmm.
picked up some good. They picked up some solid talent. Puff Johnson they got from UNC. DeMarco Dunn also, like you said, he's bold and they got too. So they I love when coaches do that because they know, hey, it's going to be tough for me to recruit, high level, 4 stars and all that. So let me to get off rocking and rolling. Let me get some talent in the portal, and he's done that, to help him because, like I said, it's a tough job. Even Mike Shrewsbury, like his first year, I think he won like 14 and 18. It was tough, and by Penn State standards, that's probably a win. That's a
Mm-hmm.
success. And then last year we saw what he did last year and had a great run, and then that led him to get the bag at Notre Dame and all that. Sometimes you just got to be the right place at the right time and get out the right time. Because there's a lot of people saying whether he should stay and all that, but there's limitations at Penn State. Like I said, it's tough to recruit. It's tough to recruit because there is talent in the PA area, but there's not the elite talent, like there is, everywhere else. So you kind of have to, find your talent and all that. But I think Mike Rhodes, he did a great job at VCU, and I think year one there's going to be ups and downs, but I think he'll be all right. I think eventually, I think they're going to invest more and all that. And like you said, now Penn State's relevant, and it feels like a lot of the bottom, like we talk about Penn State, Rutgers, like those some of those bottom tiers where they're always in the doormat, and we'll get into Rutgers because it's crazy how
Mm-hmm.
they went from bottom tier till these last few years building a program, and now we're talking about number one recruiting class potentially. Like you're recruiting big dogs now, So, but yeah, now a lot of new faces and new places, coaching wise. But Mike Rhodes taking over from Michael Shrewsbury, who was there just a couple years, but like I said, capitalized and got a nice deal to go to Notre Dame and all that. But some we'll get into some of the recruits and then some big names in the recruiting scene. Mackenzie Mbako is the first one. He was a Blue Devil. He was a
Mm-hmm.
Blue Devil and all that, but a lot of things changed in Duke and all that. So he wound up switching up and going to Indiana, which I think is a great spot for him. You got in your Michigan State Spartans. I mean, we can go through the list. I mean, half my list is just Michigan State and all that. But you know, Xavier Booker, Jeremy Fears, Cohen Carr, who, if you guys don't know, he got some hops. He got
Yeah.
some crazy hops. But like Deshaun Harris Smith going to Maryland, he's a high end 4 star.
Yep.
Jason Chapman from going to Ohio State. Ohio State got some real good recruits and all that. Real recruits. Devin Royal, Scotty Middleton, I like a lot. Gavin Griffiths going to Rutgers. Cameron Christie, who's Max Christie's brother, he's a hooper. He's going to Minnesota. Some notable names there and all that. But um, just talk to me about let's talk about Michigan State and their recruiting class. Since that's your team, that's Sparty and all that.
Mm-hmm.
How did you like? And I mean, we've talked about Xavier Booker plenty of times. Talk about Jeremy Fears and all, but let's talk about some of the other guys and all that are coming into Michigan State right now, and just how you feeling about them. And what do you think their potential impact on this team, if you think there is going to be impact for these guys coming into this upcoming season?
Yeah. So the main two, of course, as you mentioned, are Jeremy Fears and Xavier Booker. Both were McDonald's All Americans. Both were 5 stars. Jeremy's from Illinois. Xavier Booker's from Indiana. But the other two, Garrick Norman, he's like a 6'4" shooting guard out of Texas. Wasn't honestly that highly recruited until late in his recruitment process, like late in his senior year. We snagged him. A lot of people out there that watch Michigan State, if you remember Matt McQuaid, a lot of people comparing to Matt McQuaid, who's on the coaching staff now, coincidentally. He's honestly probably expect him to. I don't think he's going to redshirt, but I don't think he's going to play that much. And I think he might get spot minutes here and there, like when we blow out teams. So I'm not expecting him to do too much as a freshman, but I do think like later down the line, he will be a player. And then for Cohen Carr, it's actually crazy because, as you just mentioned, he just went viral this past weekend at our Midnight Madness, essentially what it's called, where he was just putting on a show. He's one of the best dunkers I've ever seen. And it's not so much of the fact that he's just athletic as hell, but it's the fact that he actually knows how to use his athleticism to the fullest when it comes to getting offensive rebounds, getting second chance points, blocking shots, chase down blocks, like whatever you need, he does it right. And as a freshman, when you do those little things, it helps you lead to big minutes. And I think that's going to be a big time thing for him this year. And honestly, if I'm being real, I think Cohen Carr is going to play more than Xavier Booker this year.
Oh,
Just
really?
because,
Okay.
yeah, because when I look at that four spot, right, Malik Hall's back for his fifth year. He deserves at least, at minimum, 26 minutes per game, right? So
Yeah.
right there, he needs his minutes. So that's only 14 minutes left in the game, right? Out of a 40-minute game. And so with that though, I like Xavier Booker, but I think people are so infatuated with the fact that Xavier Booker was a five-star talent that he has to play right away. And we've
Mm-hmm.
already talked about this before on this same exact show where it's like, just because a guy got a five-star rating doesn't mean he necessarily has to be thrown into the fire immediately. Like,
Exactly.
it's
100%.
okay to give guys time to develop and process and figure themselves out and get stronger and adapt to college basketball. And
Yep.
Xavier Booker, his best spot might be at the four spot. It probably is because he's not really a old school center like Michigan State's used to having. He's probably best at the four. But to me, Cohen Carr, his athleticism is gonna put him not just his athleticism, but the way that he uses his athleticism is gonna get him on the floor earlier. Now he doesn't have the best jumper. I know he has to work on that, but again, just as a screen threat, like pick and rolls with Cohen Carr, like what? That's a lob threat on the floor at all times. So I'm not too worried about him. And then Jeremy Fears
Especially with your
again, like
guards, especially with them three guards, they're gonna be able to find
exactly,
them. Yeah, that could be a potential lethal. Like I said, all you got to do is just just be a cutter. If that's what he is his
bingo.
freshman year as a cutter with Hogarth and all the other guys, the Aikens. Yeah, I mean they'll
Yeah,
find him too, and he'll be able to get easy buckets for you guys.
yeah, and just be dedicated to playing defense because we know that's a staple of our program, right? If you want to play, you want to get minutes, you want to get on the floor early as a freshman, you got to play defense. I think Cohen Carr is going to do that at a high level. And again, not just because he can block shots, but because he can actually move his feet and move laterally side to side, east to west, and do a pretty good job of sitting in the stance. So it's nothing against Xavier Booker either. When people hear me say it, they think I'm like downplaying Xavier Booker. It's just like, no, it's just give this dude time to really figure himself out. He's still learning how to be a basketball player. And now he's going into a conference where more is required of big men than any other conference in the country. We all know the Big Ten always has the best bigs, if we're being honest. And so I'll let that ride. But the last one's Jeremy Fears, where to me, it's crazy because I feel like if he was on any different program in the Big Ten, he'd probably be starting. Like if he was at Illinois, no doubt in my mind he's starting at Illinois. I know we'll talk about the Fighting Illini in a second because they don't have a point guard as of right now, but like Jeremy Fears is a dog. And Izzo comparing him to Mateen Cleaves, and if you know Izzo, that's not like that's the
That's
highest of praise. Yeah,
the
because
highest of highest.
he don't just compare anybody to anybody like a lot of people do nowadays. So I expect him to play a lot. He's going to get a lot of minutes, and even next year, when he's a sophomore, he's going to be one of the best point guards in the country, no doubt about it in my mind. I love the fact that he's coming into a situation where he doesn't have to be that dude out the gate, and he can learn and battle with AJ Hogarth in practice and Trey Holloman in practice, and that's going to make him better in the long run too. So as a whole, I'm very excited about this freshman class. But it's funny though too because when people ask me about my team as a whole this year, everybody wants to talk about the freshman class, but I think the vets on this team is what is going to make us go. That's just obvious as day. I know we love and are infatuated with NBA talents and stuff like that,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, college basketball experience wins out more than anything else.
100%. And with the amount of upperclassmen you got that played high end basketball, like I said, playing in the Big Ten, it's a dogfight. It's a dogfight night in and night out. But the upperclassmen, that's what at the end of the day, college, like I said, we get excited about these 5-star, right? Everybody loves the 5 stars and all that. But championship teams come from everything. Upperclassmen are the big. You need a blend of some youth and all that, but you win championships with upperclassmen and guys who've played a lot of basketball and all that. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's yes, everybody loves Xavier Booker, and he's a special talent. He's probably going to he potentially be a top 10, top 15 pick. If everything goes straight for him this year, but we know why people like Michigan State this year. It's because of that guard rotation, and obviously you got Izzo there in that combination. And we'll dive more into Michigan State after this. But that's some of the top recruits and all that. And we're gonna get into some of the top transfers and a big name. a top 5, top 10 recruit, Khalil Ware, going from Oregon to Indiana. Another reason why people like Indiana this year, obviously they got M'Baku, coming in from the 5-star coming in this year, but Khalil Ware, people expecting, didn't really work out at Oregon the way he wanted to, but from everything we read, everything I've heard, he's looking good and all that. And Coach Woodson, it seems like he's made the transition well for it. When we've talked about this, like in college football, especially like when you get a head coach, it seems like it's been a struggle for some guys. College basketball, it's same, but it seemed, and an old head too, like Woody, because we talked about Patrick Ewing on the big, like,
Yeah.
sorry Pat, we got to bring you up again, dog, but like we see how like coaches, guys like who are from the NBA, and he was an NBA Hall of Famer. It didn't quite work out, but it seems like Woody, he's figuring this thing out, this recruiting thing, because it's not just this year. He's got things lined up, So yeah, he's working, but he worked the transfer. He got clear, whereas to essentially get another 5-star kid, added to your class essentially. That's big. But Jameson Battle going from Minnesota to Ohio State. AJ Stars, from the Giants, he's going to go play with Wisconsin. We talked about the guys going to Penn State and all that. Mike Mitchell going for Pepperdine. I mean, Minnesota, they had a nice, like I said, a lot of the bottom tier teams understanding that they're not going to be able to get there, but working the transfer portal and that's why I feel like the Big Ten from top to bottom, it's going to be a dogfight again, because even though those bottom teams, they're going to struggle, but it's going to be a fight. Minnesota's going to fight you. Penn State going to battle and all that. Even Northwestern, those smart boys down there, they're going to fight. But any other notable transfers you like? I feel like that they're going to make a immediate impact, for their new team.
I think the one you just hit on, coming over from St. John's, AJ Storr is going to be a player. I love his game, bro. Like, and on top of the fact that, I mean, let's be honest, like Wisconsin loves to recruit slow-footed white guys, and
they do though.
AJ Storr is the complete opposite of that. He's a black dude. He's 6'7". He will dunk on you. He's a big-time wing. To be honest, I think it's going to take Greg Gard, just because he's stubborn, kind of like Rick Barnes. I think it's going to take him a minute to realize that AJ Storr is his best player. But once they do, Wisconsin, I think, is going to be a threat. I know we'll touch on him in a minute, but to me, like AJ Storr, I'd put all my money on him being the best transfer in the conference this year. No doubt about it.
Yeah, he could shoot shot 40% from 3 and all that. Like I said, he's not the typical Wisconsin player, but sometimes you got to get out of that. You got to get out of that, what you guys have been used to, and change it up and all that. Like I said, coach could be stubborn a little bit, but they got to figure it out a little there. But let's get into it and all that. Let's get into. I want to talk about the Buckeyes. Let's talk about Ohio State. Let's talk about Ohio State. So they got some nice up-and-coming freshmen and all that. That's all cool and all that. But is Coach on the hot seat? Because we talked about him last year and felt like that was a big year and all that. But Chris Holtmann, I feel like this is do or die. This is do or die for him, in my opinion. I think this is a big year for him because he's been there for a little bit now, and it's kind of been the last few years haven't gone great. Especially last year was a struggle, but I think this is do or die for him, because if he has another season where, they lost 20 games last year, when they should have been a lot better, I think it might be a wrap for him. So and with the potentially, you got Bryce, they don't want to mess up that recruitment with Bryce, but that's a big factor. You don't think they want to, not mess that up, and so how do you feel about Ohio State, and do you think that Mr. Holtmann is on the hot seat?
Based off of last season, I think you have to say he's on the hot seat, especially too because he's never been to the second weekend of the tournament, right? Yep. That's a big thing,
right? There's one win. That's it.
Exactly, and that's a big like red X on his resume, right? Especially because you're at a place like Ohio State. The biggest thing for him is his saving grace is the pros that he's put into the league, right? Malachi Branham, last year Bryce Sensabaugh, EJ Liddell. He's put in some good pro players, right? Quality pro players. But it just hasn't translated to big time wins. And at Ohio State, nobody shout out to our guy Mo, nobody's really tripping on basketball like that because of football, right? But at the same time, it's a lot of fans that because their football team is so good, they expect their basketball team to be damn near at the same level, if not a little bit worse, right? And so to me, again, I think just based off last year, his seat got to be a little bit hot because last season, I know they didn't expect for their season to go that bad. It's no possible way. With the talent that they brought in, they had Zed Key, who of course got hurt. He was dealing with that shoulder injury. But to me, I actually like this team. I think they're going to take a bit of a leap. A lot of people have them taking a big leap. I don't think they're necessarily going to go from like bottom of the conference to like top five, but I can see them going from like bottom of the conference to like top six, top seven ish, right? Just because when you look at the talent, Bruce Thornton really came alive on the back end of the season. Roddy Gale out of Niagara Falls, New York, dog, big time dog, player, one of my favorite players in the conference. Felix Okpara, 7-footer, can block shots all day long. And as you mentioned, the freshman class, Devin Royal, I wanted him badly at Michigan State. Ended up choosing the Buckeyes. Really good wing, very sound, like does a little bit of everything. Scotty Middleton, the same thing. Tyson Chapman, I think, is probably going to be the best of the freshmen. I could be wrong about that, but I'm very high on him. You mentioned Jamison Battle. That's a guy that's played in the Big Ten before that has all the experience that you need. And so as a whole, this group should be good. There's no reason for them not to not be good. Like they have all the pieces necessary. It's just about putting it together and figuring out who needs to take what shot. I think that kind of held them back too last year, right? Like when Zed Key got hurt, for some reason, Chris Holtmann was still trying to make him the number one option on offense. And I'm like, he clearly can't do it. He's a big man in the Big Ten dealing with a messed up shoulder, and you're trying to feed him in the post 20 times a game. That's not going to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when they ran the offense through Bruce Thornton was when they went from a mediocre offense to a really good offense because Bruce Thornton is just that type of guard. He's a guy that you can put the ball in his hand in late game situations, and he's going to make a play happen more often times than not. And so I really like this team. I do. So for Chris Holtmann, you got to maximize this team, though, because it's not a clear NBA guy on this roster right now. Like Roddy Gale probably is the guy, but with this collection of talent, you should make some type of noise in this conference this year. There's no reason for you to just be an average or mediocre team this year. Like those times are gone. This is the team where Chris Holtmann should really put his foot down and be like, hey, like Ohio State is going to be a program that's going to be here for a long time coming in this conference and just in the national world of college hoops at the same time as well too. So I'm expecting Ohio State to be some type of threat in the Big Ten this year.
I don't know if I see it, man. I don't know if I see it this year, and I think I just don't know if I see it with him. I think it could have the same result as last year to an extent. And if it's the same results, I think it's all right. He's been there 8 years. One, he has his first year was his best year, and it's just been down since. And like I said, it's Ohio State and it's a football school and all that. But the fact that it seems like directors now are starting to like really care now that we get into like bigger conferences and all, and now the Big Ten is going to add USC, UCLA, big time schools, that they want to take the basketball just as serious as they do football. So like I said, and I think the Bryce thing is a major thing because I think that helps. To be you want to be able to get one of you missed out on Bronny, you don't want to miss out on Bryce. I think that's a factor, and I don't know. It just this. I don't think they have a lot of depth at the wing position and all that, But it could be tough for him. I don't know if he's going to have a monster season. They got to win 20 games. They got to have a big run in the Big Ten tourney, get to the tourney, and at least win a game or two for him to me survive, in my opinion. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with the Buckeyes and all that. But like we mentioned before, like the bottom of the big. We don't got to get into all the teams, in the bottom of the Big Ten. But which teams in that bottom that are, you feel like that are going to be in that bottom tier that you feel like could surprise some people, this season?
Man, it's tough. Honestly, I'll probably go with Penn State just because, as we mentioned, all the transfers they got. Ace Baldwin. I'm a big time fan of Zach Hicks. He's actually from Camden, New Jersey. Was at Temple last year playing for Aaron McKee. Of course, Aaron McKee got fired. They made a coaching change. But again, with Mike Rhodes, the type of players that he recruits dogs. He recruits dudes that are hungry, that want to play at this level, that compete 24/7. I see it with them. The team that I'm most concerned for, And coach, shall I say, too, on top of that is Juwan Howard at Michigan. Um, I'm gonna put this out there right now, but I think this is gonna be Juwan Howard's last year at Michigan. Just because I'm not saying that he's gonna get fired. I just truly believe that he'd much rather be in the NBA than playing or than coaching in college basketball. I feel like that's always been his thing. Kind of like with Pat Ewing, right? Pat Ewing never wanted to take the Georgetown job. He just took it because John Thompson, offered it to him. But to me, Juwan, he hasn't necessarily recruited as great as he probably should have. He's been dealing with a lot of admissions problems at Michigan for some reason. They think they're Harvard for whatever reason.
They're tough. I mean,
And
Harbaugh has talked about Jim Harbaugh, the
yep.
Michigan coach, the football coach. He's
Mhm.
talked about how tough it is. It's tough. It's a lot. It's very tough to apparently recruit at Michigan.
Yeah. Like it is. I understand that, but at the same time, like when you have that much pull, especially for both those guys are alumni. You should be able to pull some type
Exactly.
of
Yeah,
strings
they're
to get
alumni
top
too. You're
players
right.
in, right? You should be able to get a Terrence Shannon. There's no reason for you not to, right? And so that's kind of my biggest thing is Jawan. He's always in the mix for these big time recruits, whether it's Isaiah Todd, Isaiah Collier, Josh Christopher, but he can
Mhm.
never secure the bag. And then when he doesn't, his plan B option is a dude from the Ivy League. And nothing against the Ivy League, but let's just be honest, like when you're at a school like Michigan, that's one of the biggest brands in all of college basketball and just the college world as a whole. You can't be settling for talent like that. I'm sorry. And so to me, I truly believe Juwan Howard is going to leave after this year, especially too because his other son, they just lost Jet. Jet went to the NBA, of course,
Yeah,
a lottery pick to Orlando.
yeah.
His
Jason's
other
there
son,
still.
Jace, exactly. His other son, Jace, is a senior, and so he's about to graduate, and I think it'll be the perfect time, right? And so and on top of that, too, it's already funky too because the roster is okay, but it's not as good as Michigan State. Like Michigan is a legendary program, and I'm a Michigan State fan saying this, but I gotta be honest, right? And on top of that, too, he's currently dealing with recovering from a heart surgery, right?
Yeah.
So he hasn't even been with the team for the past however long. And so that's a big time thing too, especially again, as we just stated, the season's around the corner. So to me, I just feel like Jawan's planning an early exit from Ann Arbor. I've been concerned with them for a while now. I just feel like he hasn't recruited to their standards. They've been solid. It's not that he can't coach or anything like that. He's just not recruiting at the level that he needs to recruit at. And so honestly, I'm gonna just put it out there on wax right now. I truly believe this will be Juwan Howard's last season in Ann Arbor as the coach for the Michigan Wolverines basketball program
They can't shoot.
at all.
Dude, they got
At
no
all.
shooters. They got zero shooters. Zero. I don't know how that's going to. And I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring up Juwan and this team and as far as like a team that could just really be bad. And
Mhm.
it's crazy to think that because we think Michigan, Juwan Howard. I mean, they should not be. Rutgers should not be. We're not talking about Penn State and Rutgers ahead of them, and essentially we are. It's a crazy times that we're in that we're talking about Rutgers and Penn State being better than. But you just look at this roster and you're just like, oh, he's in trouble. He's in
Bro.
trouble because this dude, there's no shooters on this team. They're not just the worst, maybe arguably the worst shooting team in the Big Ten. They might be the one of the worst shooting teams, in college basketball. And there's what billion teams in college basketball, and Michigan is going to be in the bottom tier. They got no shooters. So how are you going to survive in the Big Ten, spreading it out and trying? It's just not going to happen. And who's their guy? Their best player might be 5'10". It's going to be trouble, Kev, for Michigan. I know that makes
Oh
you low-key
man.
happy because you're Sparty. So seeing your rivals struggle is, that's like when UNC last year. I was happy. Like seeing turmoil, but you evaluate and you're just like, I don't, man, like it hasn't gone the way it was, and you thought it was going to go a lot better for him, but it hasn't gone. And this Jace, let's be real, he's a nice,
Cool.
he's cool. He'll play
Yeah.
5 minutes a game, but that's about it. It's rough for Michigan. It's tough times, and they're in a weird place because now, like the football, like we talk about Ohio State, the football team is a powerhouse right now. They're trying to get to a national championship, and a lot of teams trying to take both. But I don't know. They got to change. But what we talked about before, it's tough to get into Michigan. It's hard. I've read, listened to plenty of shows that people talk about with Harbaugh, how much he has to you know, twist people's arms to try to get this recruit and that recruit, and it's crazy how what he's doing now with that limited, and you would think it's a Jordan school, you'd be able to get guys
Man.
here, right? It
Hmm.
just, and like I said, with basketball, you think Juwan, NBA, but like we said, just because you got NBA behind you in your resume, don't mean you're going to be able to recruit like that. And it hasn't worked. And like I say, this could be it for him too. We might, when we do in the Big Ten preview next year, we might have definitely. I think we probably gonna have more than one name than we had this year. So yeah, Michigan is tough. That's gonna be rough basketball to watch out there. But yeah, they might be. I mean, if we're looking at just the Big Ten as a whole, they might be on the bottom. They might be. I mean, just I'm on Bad Vore right now, and they got them third to last in the Big Ten. In the Big Ten right now, and I think I mean they got Minnesota and Penn State below that, but to be in that tier, I mean Minnesota's in transition, but they picked up some good transfers and all that. Like I said, Penn State same thing too. So I think Michigan's worse than them. I
It's a
think they're worse.
shame.
They didn't really do anything in recruiting or in transfer portal. Nothing crazy. Tough
Nope.
times. Tough times in Ann Arbor for the basketball team, at least. The football team's chilling. They're trying to win a natty, but the basketball
Hmm.
team is taking steps forward. People thought the football team was taking steps back and the basketball team is making steps forward. It's the complete opposite. And I'm sure that's not what they expected in Ann Arbor, but that seems to be the case. So we might have to see, like I said, just because you got that resume or alumni, right? You think former NBA player, he's an alumni, he gonna be able to get kids to come. Doesn't always work that way. And now that roster's bad, and it could be it for him, but that's going to be interesting to see what happens there because they could get bad. But let's talk about some of the, Indiana, Maryland, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan State, Purdue. Obviously, talk about the top tier teams and all that. Which and we'll kind of go in the middle of that tier and kind of like Northwestern, Indiana, Maryland, Wisconsin, because that seems like that's like the middle, and then we get to the top tier. Out of those
Yeah.
teams, who are we feeling? Are we riding the Indiana way? Because obviously that's the everybody is riding Indiana and they're feeling them. They we just talked about Mackenzie and Baku, the top star. They got Khalil Ware, coming there. Are we right? Are we feeling Indiana, or are we like, all right, let's slow down the brakes, guys. Let's Woodson's done a solid job, but we're not. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, that's my one knock on Mike Woodson. As you mentioned, to me, like, Mike Woodson, we know he's done a good job so far, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the one knock anybody could have on him, in my opinion, the one knock that I have on him is his roster construction has been funky, right? It's
It
been
really is funky.
suspect.
Even last year was
Like,
funky.
exactly, right? And so with that, people are rocking with Indiana this year, but I'm rolling. I can't do it with them. Like, I just don't see it. Because to me, on paper, they look solid, right? They look pretty good. That's why a lot of people love them because they got
Yeah,
Mackenzie and Bako again from your Duke Blue Devils last second. They got Khalil Ware from the transporter from Oregon. But when you look at both those two names I just mentioned, right? Mackenzie and Bako and Khalil Ware, they both have the same issues, and that's a consistent motor, playing at a high level consistently. Neither one of them do that. They take like not breaks in the middle of the game, but they're just not playing their hardest 24/7.
especially
And when
when that was the big issue at Oregon was the
exactly,
border.
and when you have that from both of the guys that are supposed to be your best players, that's a major red flag to me, like major. And so
Yeah.
to me, on top of the fact that their front court should be really good, like even with Khalil Ware, I'm a big fan of Malik Renault. As a freshman, he was pretty good last year, playing next to Trace and Race Thompson. And I like Peyton Sparks too as a freshman coming in this year. But to me, look at the guard play too, right? You have Gabe Cups, freshman. You have Ja'Kai Newton. We'll see how good he could be as a freshman. And then you have Xavier Johnson. And people are acting like Xavier Johnson's been this elite point guard. And I'm like, he's been cool. He hasn't been anything spectacular. And I hate to say this, but I'll continue to say this, but until the season starts. But last year, sadly, but not coincidentally, Indiana was at their best when Xavier Johnson got hurt and they put the ball in Jalen Hood Shafino's hands.
That
That's
was We talked about that, like how we needed Jalen Hurts if you don't have the ball, and we saw what happened when that happened.
And so I'm just like, what do people really see in Indiana except for a few names on this roster, right? So to me, I'm out on them. I truly am. And again, I believe in Mike Woodson. I truly do. I think within the next 2 years, Indiana's going to be back to being a consistent threat in the conference and hopefully on a national scale as well. But as of right now, when it comes to this 2023-24 Indiana Hoosier squad, I do not see the vision. I don't know what people see in it. But maybe I could be wrong. I won't mind being wrong because I am rooting for them to be good because it helps the rest of the conference out. But right now, I don't see it at all. Like their front court should be really, really good again.
Yeah.
But even with Khalil Ware, how are they going to play him? Mike Woodson's going to want him to be an old school back to the basket type guy. But when he is at Oregon, he was chilling on the perimeter. And I'm like, bro, you're 7 feet. I'm not saying you got to post up every single play, but bro, you should be getting a good majority of your buckets from the post and then work your way out as the game progresses to the 3-point line. So I'm curious to see that dynamic as well. But I'm completely out on the Indiana Hoosiers this year.
And that's going to be the big test for Coach Woody. Is if your two best players having motor issues, can you get that out of them? And we saw what that, especially with Ware, he's super talented. Like he has top 10 pick written all over him, but the intangibles and the motor and all that scream second round pick. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something he's gonna have to figure out how to get out because the kid's super talented and all that. But like I said, Woody is, you know, Wood, and I think Woody can adapt, but you got to show him that you're going to be able to play hard because when even if you want to go to the NBA days when he was coaching the Knicks and all that, he adapted to his team. They ran, they were shooting threes, so he's being able to adapt, and so far he's adapted to the college game a lot smoother than I anticipated. I didn't think he would do the
Facts.
smooth and be able to get the players he's being able to get, but he's got if he can get Ware to play to his potential because like we said potential is crazy, then I think that's probably why people are so high on him. But that's a big if still. We got to be able to. And McKenzie, like you said, some of that same issues and all that. How does he get acclimated? Like I said, the guard position play. He like it's, and one thing I can't stand with college coaches is like with freshman point guards and they're like afraid to just like realize that like it's okay. Just let them to just have the ball in their hand and see what happens. Like we showed with Shire, right? We'll get into the ACC with Proctor and all that, and Roach. Like at least he figured it out. Like halfway through the season, is like, all right. I think the best way to go is put the ball in the freshman hand who can actually do more than just because our we got Roach who's a senior in there. Like I think more coaches need to just be able to like that's I think that's why people like Calipari and all that because he lets his freshman point guards just rock and all that. But I think more coaches need to just hey, if your freshman is your best ball and your best playmaker and your best then give him the ball. It makes sense. Jalen Hood-Schifino was your best. There's a dude that has Darren Williams like ability, and you're kind of setting him back, playing at the two. He's not. That's not him. So, I think they're a little bit overrated and all that. I could definitely see your vision why. I think paper champions. I think everybody sees names, 5 stars, and then all that. Coach Woodson and all that what he did last year, but last year's team is last year's team.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting to see how he can get these guys to play up to their potential. Because right now it's all potential, but if he can get them up there, it'll be we'll see what happens. This will be his but Trace Jackson last year. I mean, anyone could coach Trace Jackson. You got that wasn't really hard to do that, and then we finally realized with Schifino and what he had with them. But now this is going to be a test for him. Test his rules, his coaching ability, and we'll see how he does with that. But let's talk about Maryland. How do we feel about the Terrapins this year? Are we buying into them and all that? Kevin Willard and the boys.
Another team I'm hockey out on, man. I hate to say this because they're another team that a lot of people are believing in. But my issue with them is that, first of all, I do like Kevin Willard, but Kevin Willard has never had that tournament success. He had a lot of success in the regular season at Seton Hall, but he could just never get out that first weekend for some reason I don't know, because he had plenty of talented teams between Desi Sills, Angel Delgado, Miles Powell, Miles Kell, Isaiah Whitehead. The list goes on. But
Whitehead.
when it comes to this Maryland team, my thing is this: they're going to be dependent upon two freshmen. You mentioned the first one earlier, Deshaun Harris Smith, who I think is probably going to be a one and done player. I truly believe in his game.
Mhm.
I have no worries about his game whatsoever.
He's nice. I
The
like
other
him.
one is Jamie Kaiser, and he's from VA. He's good too, but when you're dependent upon two freshmen, that concerns me. When you're not Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, whatever, because it's not that you're not giving them guys a chance to just like earn their stripes. Or let me not put it like that. You're not giving them a chance to really test themselves, because when you're putting two freshmen in the starting lineup potentially, you need them to not just be good, you need them to be really, really good, right? And to me, Jameer Young is a player. You can make a case he's the best point guard in the conference. He showed that last year. He's a dog. Julian Reese, really, really good as well. Dante Scott struggled in his first year under Kevin Willard last year, but I think he should be a little bit better this year. And again, I'm not worried about Deshaun Harris Smith. To me, it just comes down to Jamie Kaiser. They need Jamie Kaiser. Like, they don't have time for these guys to hit that freshman wall. Like, they have to be good and consistent all season long, because I think they were like one of the worst teams on the road in the Big Ten last year. I think they might have been the worst road team in the Big Ten last year. That's probably not going to be the case this year, but we'll see. But if those freshmen hit, then I'll believe in Maryland a lot more. Again, I believe in Deshaun Harris Smith. My concern is more so with Jamie Kaiser. And when they went out to their foreign tour this past summer, I forget exactly where they went, but Jamie Kaiser did lead them in scoring. And a lot of people kind of bought into that. But if I'm being honest, those trips really aren't good for anything outside of just building chemistry and camaraderie. But when it comes to actual games, a lot of that stuff does not translate. So we'll see. I'm out as much as I want to believe in them. I just, when you're dependent on two freshmen to be major players, and I don't even know if both of them are going to start, but I think it's going to shake out like that, where it's going to be Jameer Young, Deshaun Harris Smith, Jamie
Hmm.
Kaiser, Dante Scott, and Julian Reese. That starting five is just like cool to me, right? And so we'll see. But as of now, I just can't believe in the Terps.
Yeah, it's been a while since the Turks have been truly like nationally relevant too. So I know obviously they were in the ACC before I used to grow up hating Maryland. I mean they cost that one year they in what 02 they were natty. It's the six still sick they win, and that team with Juan Dixon and them boys. But
Mm-hmm.
we got to get Maryland back in the national picture because
ASAP.
it's always good to have teams you know you know, teams like Maryland that have had success before could get them back going and all that. So we'll see what happens with them. Let's talk about the Fighting Illini, Brad Underwood. We feel,
Mm-hmm.
last year was kind of a
Tumultuous.
very weird year. Players not having not rocking with him. Losing guys and very disappointing season. I mean, we thought potentially they could be one of the potential national champion sleeper, and all that, but it didn't. It didn't go that way for Coach Underwood and all that. And maybe we know one of these coaches that is in the on the hot seat. Especially with how kind of underperforming. So how are we feeling about them coming into this year? Are we 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 think Brad figured some of the stuff he kind of messed up last year and all that. How are we feeling about them this year?
Yeah, just like with Matt Painter, I think last year is going to be a huge learning lesson for Brad Underwood, right? Because the talent on paper again was amazing, but as you just mentioned, it was like hell on the court. They could not figure it out. They had so many off the court issues. Matthew Meyer didn't work. He won a national championship at Baylor. He was,
You didn't know how to figure out that one. Nah, I don't get that one, man.
yeah,
You got a champion on your team. That should be that should have been an easy transition. You should be able to work with him and that help galvanize the locker room. Instead, Matthew Myers like I essentially him and coach ain't seeing eye to eye and all that. That was the weird. Maybe with Clark and all that. Okay, freshmen sometimes egos. I get that sometimes.
mhm.
But Matthew, that should have been a smooth transition, and I think that's got to be on Brad.
Yeah, and then you lose Jaden Epps, who was it just came out the other day. I forget exactly who they scrimmaged against, but he dropped 46 in a scrimmage, right? All right, they played Wake Forest. That's who it was. He dropped 46 in a scrimmage. And when it comes to Illinois, you're going to hear the same thing about them all season long. Why didn't they get a point guard? Why do they not have a true point guard on the roster? The talent on the roster is phenomenal, right? But they don't. The only true point guard they have is Nicolo Moretti, who's actually the younger brother of Davide Moretti, who was on that Final Four team with Texas Tech a few years ago. We'll see if he's ready. They also got Draven Gibbs Lawhorn, who's from Indiana, was originally committed to Purdue before he decided to decommit and go and play for Illinois. But outside of that, like those two guys are unproven. If they would have just got a solid, proven point guard, I know they tried to get Ray J. Dennis from Toledo before he ended up at Baylor. They struck out on him. They tried to get a dude from Iowa State who was coming off a torn ACL. He ended up, not making it to the program. But as a whole, the talent is there. Look, Coleman Hawkins and Terrence Shannon Jr., those are NBA guys off the rip, right? To me, Dane Danger is going to be one of the better post players in the conference. I like the other freshman, Amani Hansberry, as well. He's a pretty good player, too. Sincere Harris was a junkyard dog for them last year as a freshman. I expect him to be a little bit better as a sophomore.
Quincy
Marcus
Guerra
Damask.
from Oregon is going to be a solid pick. Oh, that was a solid pick.
Yeah. Marcus Damask, another one from Southern Illinois. Him and Luke Goody are probably going to be their knockdown shooters. I like Quincy Guerrier, too. Had an up and down career at Oregon, but if we're just being honest, Oregon as a program has been very, very weird the past few years. We'll talk about the Pac-12. We'll get into the Pac-12 soon, but as a whole, they have all the pieces except for that point guard spot. And what do we say every March? You got to have a point guard, bro. And we'll see. Brad Underwood has come out and said that Ty Rodgers is going to play that spot, but I've watched Ty Rodgers. He's from Saginaw. He's a hell of a player. He's a 6'8" wing. He's not a 6'3" point guard. He's a 6'8" wing. His natural position is not the point guard spot. So I'm very curious to see how that experiment works. But as a whole, Illinois has the talent to be up there in the same tier as Mont Spartans and Purdue, no doubt about it. Just without that point guard, it's kind of concerning, but we'll see if they can make it work.
Hey, and if it don't work this year, Brad, it might be a wrap because you're relying. He has a lot of upperclassmen on this roster, so if he don't have any type of run this year, he might have a tough time for the next upcoming. If he's still the coach there next, because they got a lot of transition on this roster. But Terrence Shannon, Coleman Hawkins. I mean, that you think with two guys like that, potential All-American type players, that should be good. But I don't know. Do you trust Brad? Like I said, no point guard, and that's going to be tough. It is going to be tough. That's going to be interesting to see what happens there in Champaign. So, they still got talent, but no point guard, like you said, you don't got a point guard. I'm not even consider you for a national championship.
Exactly. Unless you just have like multiple like certified top 10 draft picks, that's different. They do have Terrence Shannon and Coleman Hawkins or NBA guys, but like unless you just have like super NBA supreme talent, I can't trust you to win a national championship without a point guard. So again, man, we'll see with them.
We'll definitely see. But Coach Brad, it's a big year for him. Big year for him. All right, let's talk about the cream of the crop in the Big Ten, and that's Sparty and Purdue. We'll save Sparty for last. Let's go into Purdue, and we listen. We all know Purdue. They got the big Canadian out there. He's probably gonna win Player of the Year again and all that. Number one seed. We know what happened. We know how the story ends with this team, right? They're kind of like we see this a lot. They're like the Cowboys. Feels like they're gonna have a great regular season, but we know how it ends. And it didn't just end; it ended
terribly,
horrifically, and it just doesn't make. Listen, I know they have flaws. But when you got Zach Edey, you should not lose in the first round as a number one seed. And that's exactly what happened to this team. Number one seed, National Player of the Year, and they just forgot that he was there. And just like Matt Painter, he's shown that he's a good coach, has a lot of success at Purdue. It's been there forever. It feels like he's been there, 20 years? It feels like it's been there, or damn near 20 years. But it seems like it always ends like in just the worst ways for him. I think they're going to be atop the Big Ten, or at least battling you guys for that. I think they're going to have again, success in the regular season. Zach E's going to win. He's either going to be in the contention for Player of the Year or he's going to win Player of the Year again. What's going to be different this year than last year? I know the guards, they had a lot of the freshman guards and all that. Do you think they mature enough that they can help get them to past the first round, is and maybe get to where they need to be, and that's the Elite Eight, Final Four, national championship? Because this is last year, big man. This is it for that. So if it doesn't happen this year, it might not happen for a while. So what's going to be different for this year for Purdue that they get past these early round struggles and get to a Sweet 16, Elite Eight, Final Four, maybe even win a damn national championship? Because they got it. They got the best player in the country.
Yep. I'm gonna keep saying this. I'm gonna keep saying this all season long about Purdue. As you just mentioned, you know what you're gonna get from Zach Edey, right? For the most part, we know what they're gonna get from those two sophomore guards in Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith. The key is the guys in between them on that wing and perimeter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Either Mason Gillis or Caleb First has to take a leap and not just be a solid role player. Like, they need them to be a guy. And when I say a guy, I'm not even necessarily saying a star. I'm just saying a consistent guy that you can rely upon in big time moments throughout the course of a game. They can knock down big time shots, because when you go back and look at that Fairleigh Dickinson loss, all Fairleigh Dickinson did was they doubled and tripled team Zach Edey, and they dared Purdue to shoot, and Purdue could not knock down shots. And it's crazy that I'm saying that, and that happened because one of Matt Painter's staples at Purdue has been shooting. He's had shooters almost every season, like a knockdown shooter that could run off a whole bunch of different type of crazy screens and would just knock down shots from everywhere. Carson Edwards, Dakota Matthias, the list goes on and on and on. Stupid shooters. But this team, they have some, but they're not consistent every night. Like, Mason Gillis had a game where I think he had like 8 threes, but nobody's doing that every single night, right? If you can just get one of them guys to hit like 2 to 3 threes a night, that's perfect, right? And just get some offensive rebounds.
Braden's got like what, 38% from 3, 39%. So he's someone that can hit some shots for you.
Yeah, and Fletcher Lawyer's a big time shooter too. It runs in his family, right? Like, Fletcher Lawyer can knock down shots, but when all the weight of the team fell down on his shoulders last year because he was the only consistent knockdown shooter. And so again, them wings, especially them forward guys, because that's another thing too. After the point guard spot, I truly believe that power forward spot is the second most important position in the game, because you need them to be versatile. You need them to be able to guard the other team's best player, to rebound, to hit key shots. Like, that 4 spot is essential, right? We've seen some really good power forwards in the past few years, or whatever you want to call it. And when you have a 4 like that, it takes a lot of pressure off of everybody else. And so, to me, that's going to be the key for Purdue. But I like this team. I'm a big believer in Trey Kaufman-Renn, who was a freshman last year. He's a sophomore this year. Matt Painter came out and said that he kind of messed up his minutes last year because it's hard, because he's also a post player. And when you have a guy like Zach Edey, who's the Wooden Award winner and All-American, you got to play him as many minutes as possible. But Trey Kaufman-Renn, to me, honestly, I think he probably ends up being a better NBA prospect than Zach Edey. I think right now he is. And, I think Zach Edey, if he doesn't do well in the NBA, he'll make millions of dollars overseas. But to me, Trey Kaufman-Renn is just a better NBA prospect. I think he's going to shine for them. So I'm going to be very interested and curious to see how Purdue decides to stagger their minutes, because you can't really play them together just because Trey Kaufman-Renn doesn't really space out the floor. Like, he can hit mid-range shots, but he's not spacing out to the three-point line and knocking down shots consistently. I think maybe he will be able to this year. We'll see. But as a whole, it's just them wing spots, bro. Like, the wing spot is the most important spot for Purdue. You need those guys to be productive. Again, they don't have to be stars. They don't have to be as dominant as Zach Edey. They just have to be quality and a little bit better than just the average role player. And that's going to be the thing that takes Purdue over the top from being a really good team to a great team. And my last point with them too was, last year, the biggest thing that I feel like a lot of people didn't give them credit for was that they kind of came out of nowhere, right? After they beat, your Duke Blue Devils and Gonzaga at the PK 85, nobody was talking about Purdue going into the season like that, right? Then they went on to have a dominant season. And so I'm curious to see how they go from being the hunter to the hunted, because everybody's going to have them circled on the calendar whenever they match up against Purdue this year. And so I'm curious to see how they handle that spotlight, because Matt Painter teams, just like Coach Izzo, they really do their best when nobody's betting on them, when everybody's counting them out, and when they're just not even a name. that's when they're at their best. So I'm curious to see how Purdue handles all this limelight and quote unquote pressure that comes with it.
Yeah, and there's going to be pressure again because you still got Zach Edey there, so you're still going to be considered a favorite and all that. But like I said, it's going to come down to Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith. I think those are the two big keys. And I know, their wing position is lacking, but if Braden and Fletcher, can learn from last year's experience and all that, and I think they'll be all right, and I think they'll be able to advance and not, because that's tough, and they they got to take whatever what happened with Virginia a few years back when they lost in the first round. I think they got to take whatever you can learn from that and try to apply that to your team, because that's gut wrenching losing in the first round. That's gut wrenching, and then with a team as talented as they were last year, that shouldn't have happened, man. It's either they could make you or could break you. So either you could rally around them and be like, all right, we lost in the first round, right? But that's going to be our rallying cry. And, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about them cutting down the nets. That's the thing. That's the crazy thing, too. Like, I still think, even with their failures in the postseason, if you said, yo, Chris, Purdue's is the national champions this year, I wouldn't be surprised. They got the pieces and all, but we'll see what happens and all that, because it's that's a big stank. That's a big stank losing the first round and all that. But let's talk about Sparty. Let's talk about Sparty. A lot of expectations in East Lansing and all that. You guys, like I said, we talk about some of the high end recruits you got, but that's not why people are high on Michigan State. Obviously, we know why. It starts with the man up top, Coach Izzo, and what he brings, but it's the upperclassmen, it's the guards, the veteran guards. We just talked about how do you win in March? Guard play. And that's why I think people are high on Michigan State. So, Kev, why should we buy into Michigan State potentially cutting down the nets in March?
Because we have the best backcourt in the country, in America.
I don't even think it's close.
Wow. I think it's some competition. I think you guys are up there. I think
I like our backcourt, but I think the amount of experience your backcourt has, I think that is very crucial for teams to win national championships. I think the three-headed monster there is, and then you could blend in some of the young guys too. Like if you have to change it up, I think that's going to be very, very key. And then you guys have the most experience possible.
Yeah, so to me, I mean, when you look at AJ Hogard, I think he's one of the best pure point guards in the country. I feel like a lot of people Michigan State land in East Lansing, they haven't given him his full respect and credit, because when you look at a majority of our big time games within the past few years, he's been one of our best players, whether it's a win or loss. Like you look back when we played you guys a few years ago in the NCAA tournament with Paulo, he was our best player in that game. That same season, we played against Purdue with Jaden Ivey in the Big Ten tournament, and multiple times in the regular season, he was the best player in that game. The first game of that season, we played against Kansas, who went on to win a national championship that year. He was, or the year after that, he was the best player in that game. Like AJ Hogard is a certified dog. He outplayed Tyler Kolek last year in the NCAA tournament. Tyler Kolek was the Big East Player of the Year. People look at him as the best point guard in the country right now, and for good reason, right? But AJ Hogard is like that. He's 6'4". He's a bully. He's a mismatch because he knows how to use his shoulder and his leverage, and you can't just put a small guard on him because he will abuse them, with all due respect. Tyson Walker from Long Island, dog, right? Really just burst onto the scene last year. We see that he's not the traditional point guard, but he's more so of like a shooting guard to point guard's body. And he can get a bucket, no pun intended, from anywhere on the floor. He averaged like 14 points per game last year, high-level three-point shooter, elite finisher at the rim, just does it all. And he's an underrated defender at that. Jaden Akins, to me, he's probably the best NBA prospect on this team. Knockdown shooter, lefty, good mid-range shooter, can get to the rim, will dunk on you, might be our best defender as well. He just has everything. Malik Hall, his career at Michigan State has been injury-riddled, but when he's healthy and playing at a high level, he's really good. I think he'll be one of the better glue guys in the entire country this year. So I'm excited to see him being healthy. And then I look at Mady Sissoko, another guy, didn't really play that much in his career up until last year where he was thrown into the fire as a starter. But I think that helped him going into this year, right? Being thrown to the fire, getting battle tested, playing against guys like Drew Timmy, like Zach Edey, like Hunter Dickinson, like Trace Jackson Davis. That can only make you better, right? And so I'm
Mhm.
expecting him to be better as a senior in his last year in East Lansing. And then I look at other guys, right? We already talked about the freshman class, but that sophomore class to me is going to be the key to this team. When it comes to guys like Trey Holloman, he was the backup point guard last year out of Minnesota, pretty good. The other two guys are the keys for me in our front court, Carson Cooper and Jackson Kohler. Carson Cooper looked really well last year as a freshman, 7-footer. He's not the typical Michigan State big man in the fact where you could throw him the ball a million times in the post and ask to go get a post bucket, but great patience, excellent footwork, fundamentally sound, good lob threat, sets really good screens to free up guys to get open looks and shots. Just does all the little things correctly, and I think that'll be even better as a sophomore. And then Jackson Kohler, to me, I think he's probably going to take the biggest leap of any player on this team just because his post work and his post moves are second to none. And especially being in a conference like the Big Ten where they still prioritize back to the basket big men, he is going
Mhm.
to thrive, in my opinion. And I heard something about he's in a boot right now, so I'm hoping that injury is not too serious, but hopefully he gets healthy soon. But to me, Jackson Cole is going to be a guy where you can just give him the ball and he's going to work out in the post all night long. And so I'm excited for this team, man. The expectations are through the roof, rightfully so. We have all the pieces needed to cut down the nets in Phoenix this year at the Final Four. I expect this team to have a lot of great memories and moments. They're going to be fun. They should have a lot of moments on the Sports Center top 10 this year. And I'm excited, man. The guard play is supreme. And, man, it's fun times in East Lansing this year, man. I cannot wait for a couple weeks to start and get this thing kicked off.
If the strengths of this team is, the upperclassmen and the veteran guard play, what do you think can possibly trip you up this season?
I think the one concern would be rebounding because that's kind of been our thing the past few years. And it's crazy I'm even saying that because the staple of our program is rebounding, defense, and getting up and down, playing fast offense, right? But the past few years, ever since COVID hit, we've been okay, but we haven't played the Michigan State standards when it comes to defense and rebounding. Defensively, I'm not worried because we have guys that can guard individually. I think the team defense will come along with that as we, play more games. But rebounding has been a key thing, man. I look at it from a few different angles, but just we just got to get back to hitting the glass. Like we don't get second chance opportunities like we usually get. Those are important, right? Getting those second chance putback dunks or whatever the case may be, or just those second chance threes off the offensive rebound. We need more plays like that, and I think that will change this year just because we're a little bit more well balanced at that, and it won't just be one guy. Like our best rebounder in the past few years was honestly Joey Hauser, and Joey Hauser was an unathletic 6'9" white guy, right? If I'm just being honest, like that's not Michigan State
No,
basketball. And
you're
there's
right.
nothing against him. It's just I'm being honest, right? So I expect Madi Sissoko to be better. I think Malik Hall will be good in that department. Jaden Akins is a really good rebounder as a guard. Cohen Carr, we just talked about his athleticism. He should definitely be averaging like 5 rebounds, depending on how much time he gets this year. But as a whole, that's the one thing that I think could really trip us up, and maybe a lack of wings, like true wings. But even then, I think having a three-headed snake at the guard spot is a little bit more potent and effective than having a true wing. True wings are still important depending on matchups, but when you have three guards that can go, you look at Baylor in 2021, all three of their guards were elite at just getting to their spots and creating and playing defense. You look at Darren Williams' Illinois team with Luther Head, like those guys were really, really good, right? So I think we have that. But the only concern I have is truly just rebounding, man.
Yeah, I think and I agree on that. I think that's the one thing, maybe not having a lot of big bodies on your team and all that. But I think with the guard play, Izzo, I think those things you can overcome that, and it should be well. But yeah, I know you're excited. You should be really excited because this team is, definitely. What were you guys ranked in the preseason poll? I know it
Or
was 4, right? It was Kansas, Duke,
Purdue,
Purdue, and then
and then
you
us.
guys
Yep.
in that top 4. And I think that's probably where you should be. I probably would put you guys ahead of Purdue, to be honest. But then that 3-4, I think you guys there should be a lot of excitement in East Lansing right now. I think you guys have all the talent, coach, and all that. And I'm sure. Listen, it's been a little 2000, right?
Yep.
2018 and all that. So Coach Izzo, 23 years since he won a natty and all that. I feel like this is the first time in a while where it's like, okay, like we're not on. You guys aren't under the radar. Like you guys, hey, it's Michigan State. Like we got a squad this year, and I think health. Obviously, you can't predict health and all that, but if you guys are healthy and all that, you guys should be. Hopefully, we get to see each other again, and then in the tournament again, and we have another
Yeah.
battle. It seems like every time Duke and Michigan State go at it, we always have fun battles, but it should be a good year. The Big Ten's, obviously we talked about some of the teams, top to bottom. Some of the bottom two teams are not as bad as people think, except for Michigan. It seems like Michigan and all, even Nebraska, I think they might be scrappy this year. That they might be a little scrappy, with Fred Hoiberg and all of that. But can Illinois get out of their own headway? Because they got talent. What does Ohio State do? Can they figure it out and all that? There's a lot of intriguing. Can Purdue finally, can they do what Virginia did when the Virginia lost to the number one as a number one seed and bounce back and have a deep run in the tournament? A lot of things, intriguing storylines in the Big Ten. I'm really looking forward to it. But Kev, episode 2, season 2, Get a Bucket podcast, Big Ten preview in the books. We're gonna have our next shows be wrapping or coming right after this. So
Yep.
we're banging out. We got college basketball season underway. We're gonna be talking about the Pac-12, in our next show. So stay tuned for that. But Kev, appreciate you as always. Tell the people they can find you on all your socials.
Yes, sir. All my socials, man, are at Kevin Mufasa 7, KEVOOMUFASA 7. Appreciate all y'all tapping in. Go tap in with Off the Ball Network. Whole bunch of dope creators over there that do great work. And as always, salute again, presidents. Keep rocking. Season around the corner. It's about to be lit this year for sure.
It is definitely going to be lit. We're going to have a lot of great content coming for you. Some great guests, potentially lined up and all that. We definitely gonna have a lot of great things in store. But we're gonna finish up these previews before college basketball season starts up. We said Pac-12 preview coming up next. Obviously, we're gonna get into the ECC and all that, and all the other conferences and all that. But stay tuned. You follow me Off the Ball Pod. Like I said, Kev Mufasa 7. And we'll keep you updated on all upcoming shows. But Get a Bucket podcast, season 2, episode 2 in the books. Like I said, Pac-12 preview is coming out as our next show. So stay tuned, tap in, and all that. So be well, be safe, take care. Peace out.